Well, welcome everyone once again. Thank you for joining us. Today, we will be discussing about benefits or reasons for pursuing an MBA in the Netherlands and specifically at RSM, coming from or residing in the US or Canada. What could be perhaps the gains from having an international experience, doing your MBA abroad. How could you achieve any career goals that you have set for yourself or potential relocation back home? These and many other questions we will be addressing today in our webinar, and we have a wonderful alum with us sharing his experience with us, Daniel Chedi. Thank you so much, Dan, for being with us today.
Pleasure.
Before I let you introduce yourself, allow me to introduce myself briefly. My name is Maria. I'm originally from Greece. I live in the Netherlands, as I mentioned before, and I'm one of the recruitment and admissions managers for the International Full-time MBA program at RSM. I take care primarily the Americas and Europe, so everyone who is residing at these two parts of the world and is interested in the full-time MBA program at RSM can contact me with any questions that you might be having. Together with my colleague Hilary Lemieux, we will be hosting the event today, and we will be discussing with Dan about his experience. So we're really looking forward to hear more about you. How was your experience with the MBA program? But first of all, I'll let you introduce yourself, and I'll give you the space to do so. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Chedi. I was part of the 2014 batch, and remarkable to think that it was almost 10 years ago once I started my MBA journey. A little bit about me. Since graduating, I moved to London and I started working at Deloitte Consulting, working in their technology innovation department. Was there living in London for about 5 or 6 years. Got to see a good part of Europe and the rest of the world through Deloitte. It was a truly remarkable experience. Following that, I moved back home to my home and native land, Toronto, Canada, where I remained with Deloitte for about a year or so. And then I joined another consultancy, kind of focused more on technology innovation in the financial services space. Then, of course, COVID came a knocking, and the small company was not able to withstand the shocks of this global pandemic that we had had. So I decided to, in the time that I had, to started my own business, and it was a company that I had run for about 3 years. It was sort of a boutique consultancy focused on digital workflows. Did that for about a few years, and after a couple more gray hairs, I thought it was time to have a family, and I ended up selling the business, focusing on being a dad for a little bit. And most recently, I've joined Scotiabank as part of their fintech partnerships and innovation team. And it's been a role that I've been in for the last almost about a year or so. Yeah, that's a little bit about me in a nutshell.
Thank you so much. It already sounds very exciting with all the international background that you have built. I guess kind of like an obvious question to start with is, why did you decide to do an MBA some years ago, and why did you eventually choose the Netherlands as RSM and RSM as the school for you to complete your MBA studies?
Sure. Well, to answer your first question, I guess the decision for me to kind of press pause on the career building and just kind of focus on an education stream, it was because at the job that I was in, it was mostly I was just doing things. I wasn't learning things. And as I was kind of growing within the company, I was getting invited into, bigger conversations that I kind of felt a little bit out of my depth. And I felt that at that point in my career, I needed a little bit of the fundamental underpinnings of business. Needed to understand a little bit about finance, a little bit about accounting, operations, strategy, HR, and everything in between. It was something that I was trying to learn as I was doing my job, which, as you can probably imagine, wasn't sustainable on both sides. Um, so, and I realized that if there was a time to do it, that was the perfect time because I was at that juncture where I kind of felt I was a little bit plateauing. And in order for me to kind of unlock sort of higher level conversations, higher level jobs, I I decided that taking an MBA was the best decision to make. Um, and just to answer your next question, Maria, about why did I choose the Netherlands? Well, I had visited the Netherlands previously, and I kind of fell in love, and it was just there's no country that I've ever been to, and I've been to a whole lot of them, that's quite like the Netherlands. It has this charm to it, and it just has this little feeling that when you're there, um, and so I had a really good kind of taste in my mouth, I guess, previously. And I was fortunate enough to get into a number of schools, both at home and overseas. But I think the thing that sealed the deal for me was um, visiting Holland and being able to visit RSM and to meet some of the admissions folks and just to kind of walk you through the curriculum, walk you through the campus and everything like that. And I just got a really good feeling, and a lot of these things, logic will always tell you to take the road less traveled and, just not to do anything risky and just stay home and grind through or figure it out. Um, but it was just the instinct. It was the feeling that I got when I was there, that I trusted. And that was my decision. And no regrets at all.
I think for a lot of people that are looking at a European MBA program in another, I mean, of course, for North Americans, it's another country. Can you give us a little sense of like what was that preparing to relocate part like? And were there some, parts of that that RSM supported? And I know it was a
For
little
sure.
while ago, but I think that for a lot of people is a point of a little bit of worry and like a lot of uncertainty.
Of
And I
course.
think that it would benefit a lot to hear a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, of course. I mean, Rotterdam was a city that I had heard of, but I didn't really know much of. I knew it had a big port, and I knew it was, um, another town in Holland, similar to Amsterdam. Um, but yeah, it is. Like, I mean, there's a lot of great schools here, and even in Toronto, there's a whole bunch of good ones across Canada, some really good ones. Of course, in the U.S., some incredible ones. And like who would have thought that I would have gone to Rotterdam? But like I said, it was the international program was something that I had always kind of wanted. Toronto was home, but I never really had an opportunity to, visit Europe and definitely work in Europe or travel through Europe. Um, and I just felt like that was just a huge blind spot, both in my personal and in my professional life. So, um, yeah, it in retrospect, it seems like a crazy decision to make, but it it was all the right signals were pointing me in that direction. And just on your next point, Hillary, about the relocation, it was actually a lot easier than I had thought, because I was thinking about it as this huge, massive pivot and this huge change that I was going to be doing. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was, but just the folks at RSM were, to be honest, just really great and just making sure that it was a soft landing. I'm sure there were a lot of people that were in my boat who had never visited Rotterdam before. I'd been to Amsterdam and The Hague, but never had been to Rotterdam before. Um, so the preparation and just sort of the due diligence and being able to say, hey, here are all the things that you need from, your residence card, and here's the currency, here's a little bit it's about the language, here's a little bit about the culture. It just got me so much more excited about this because there was all these little bits of the onion that were just kind of getting unraveled, and yeah, really eased the transition. Like, I mean, it was a big shock when I just sort of made that change. And I remember because the program started in January, I spent Christmas with my family at home, and then I spent New Year's drinking a bottle of champagne and crawling Flatland. And I never would have thought that was something that I was going to be doing. But just from the get-go, that spark, that energy, that enthusiasm, like the fear of the unknown could, it cripples a lot. And like I said before, it'll always reveal a no, or no, there's a million reasons why I shouldn't be doing it. But the fear of the unknown also was something that it motivated me. I was in a country where I didn't know a lick of Dutch. I didn't know much about, kind of anything. But I think that was the point. That was the point.
Thank you so much for that. We've received also a question from one of our participants, Imre. He's asking specifically about the type of program that you chose. You completed the full-time MBA program, if I'm not mistaken, in 2014.
Yeah.
You were here. Perfect.
Yeah, full-time.
Amazing. What was what made you choose this program in comparison perhaps to an executive MBA? And how did you, let's say, what was this experience, and were you perhaps able to work during your MBA studies? Was it something that was easy to do for a full-time MBA? How did that work for you?
Yeah, great question. First and foremost, I have had a lot of friends who've done sort of executive MBAs, and a lot of the feedback that I'd gotten, and this is feedback that I'd received even prior to joining RSM, is that you're burning the candle at both ends, but not in a good way. Just the balancing the workload between your day job and, and then, as soon as you log off for the day, you're picking up, you're doing group projects and studies and stuff. I knew that balance was just going to burn me out, to be perfectly honest. And I knew just, with me and just knowing myself, like I did need some time to kind of reset after the day, and being able to, with the full-time MBA, you're focusing solely on yourself, your studies, your experiences, and having that dedicated focus on just your personal and professional development. For me, it was exactly what I needed. And I felt that if I'd done an executive program, even, continuing to work while I was doing my studies, I wouldn't really get that fulsome sort of experience by having, just sort of a time boxed and sort of framed full-time experience. But everybody's different. That is to say, like I'm even working with somebody now who's doing their executive MBA at Queen's. And, it works for some people, but for others, myself included, being able just to kind of put the pencil down and focus solely on the MBA experience was really good for me.
Thanks so much for sharing that. We do hear that quite a bit from people who are interested in doing a full-time MBA, that they'd rather spend, let's say, a year or 50 months, depending on how long an MBA program is, to really focus on the personal and professional development and just have that as their focus, let's say, for the duration of the program, rather than I don't want to say wasting their energy, but putting a lot of energy on both ends, also their education through an MBA program, but also developing as professionals at the same time, or working for an organization. You don't have the same results. You don't get the same benefits if, like you said, you sort of divide your attention between these two really important things, because it will take a very much of your time and of your energy doing an MBA program. So you're sort of jeopardizing the success on both sides, your career, and also, of course, the benefits that the MBA program has to offer to you.
Sure.
Thank you for sharing that. And we have also a follow-up question from Imre. How was it after? Okay, that was also one of the questions I had on my list, but we can take it out. It's no problem at all. How was it for you after you completed the MBA program? How did you feel being an MBA graduate? Did you feel any sort of confidence, or do you feel different in the work environment after you got your first role after graduation?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of feelings, I guess, because the program ended in at the end of the year, but we didn't graduate until March, I believe, if memory serves correctly. So there were a lot of feelings, right? Because we were all at the point now, we were all looking for jobs. Some people had already landed jobs, some people had already been headhunted and recruited. Some people were still actively interviewing and traveling all over the place. Um, I was I was very nostalgic because, a Canadian, I'm an emotional guy, and I really I really knew that I was going to miss those moments, and I knew that the time had gone by so quickly. And I know, the RSM program is 1 year, and it gone by in a flash. Um, but the feeling was, it's such a cliche, right? But like one door was closing and another one was opening, and it was opening like wide. And I had that point where I guess I never really thought, I thought it would be a nice to have if I was able to kind of stick around in Europe. But I suppose that going into the program, I'd always thought I'd come back to my home and native land. Um, but there was a point, I think it was midway through the program, where I was like, let's see where this goes. And I started applying to jobs in Europe and in London, and um, so at that point, you were kind of missing your friends, but you were already kind of running with applications, with interviews, with kind of keeping that energy, enthusiasm, that proactivity, about finding something that you really, really wanted to sink your teeth into. So it was bittersweet, of course, to say goodbye. And, people were flying out every day, and some of them weren't going to come back for graduation, which was pretty sad because, half a world away. Um, but yeah, um, it was a really awesome time because we had some time together, but we were also really all helping each other, like prep for interviews and doing role play with like recruiters and stuff like that. We'd all peer review CVs and stuff to make sure we're touching on all the right notes. And so yeah, it was a great time, although bittersweet.
Thank you. And was it? I'm really curious to hear, and I know Hillary has a question, so I will let you take the next one. Are you still in touch with some of your classmates from the MBA program?
Of course.
Oh,
Spoke with a good friend of mine actually on the weekend. We were kind of joking about some Olympics and some rivalries there. Very close. And even after, I mean, it's been a decade since I graduated. Still remarkable to set that in. But I've been to India for weddings. I've been to birthday parties in Greece. I've been doing conference calls with somebody in Japan and Australia, just kind of connecting and shooting the jazz. Um, I ended up falling in love with somebody in my batch too, so we're not together anymore. But at the time, it was just a wonderful thing. And we had stayed together, after we graduated for a few years. But yeah, it's just because the program is so intimate. It's a natural byproduct that you develop these really close relationships with people. Um, Rotterdam itself, like, you'll see the city, it's so beautiful, and everyone's super close to each other, and we all go to the same areas, study together, live together, work together. So we developed really close bonds with a lot of people. Um, and yeah, it's cool because, when I was traveling to Italy, is going back 5 years, I just talked to 5 guys that were the Italians in our batch, and hey, yeah, come to Sicily, we'll show you Catania, or come to Milan, I'll show you this. So it was great. Just anywhere you went, you had a friendly face that you can just kind of call up and go for a beer, which was a natural a nice byproduct of the program.
thank you.
I think for, of course, a lot of people, the MBA decision is so career driven. And I think many are hoping to do some change. I mean, maybe changing industry, changing function, changing geography. Can you kind of give a sense of what was the career piece like at RSM, and what was some of the kind of the help at the school, the different sort of things that, you feel like really set you up for success that were part of the program, part of And what was that kind of overall experience like for you?
I'm going to say something that might get me in a little bit of trouble, but I think I learned more outside of the classroom than I did inside the classroom. And I mean, with a lot of MBA programs, accounting is accounting at the end of the day. Stats are stats. Ops is operations. Marketing is marketing. And, of course, the teachers and the curriculum, and it plays a factor. But luckily, RSM had great teachers from all over the world flying in just to teach classes. But I learned in my experience and just sort of, my own career development, it really kind of blossomed outside of the classroom, to be honest. And it was just sort of the things that I participated in that, you know, pre-MBA Dan would have done. Like I did a TED talk. You know, I competed and represented RSM at the MBAT, which for those that don't know is just the greatest tournament of sport, better than the Olympics, by the way. And it was just like you just putting yourself out there in different places. Meeting a guy, my friend from Greece, and just saying, hey, like let's go here, and just flying there on a weekend. I mean, it was those types of things that I never really thought possible. And that confidence translates into your professional life. Now I can't get enough public speaking or, doing workshops and stuff like that where I never really thought I would have done that before. Traveling, doing things impulsively on a whim without, psychoanalyzing every single minute detail until, all the lights go red. Like that now is just, it's gone. So and that kind of stuff, yeah, you bring that to work every day. You bring that to work when when you just see something differently and you have the confidence to say, hey, I think there's a better way to do things. And here's what I think. What do you think about it? Let's discuss. So yeah, I think there's a lot of great. I learned a lot of stuff in the class, and don't get me wrong, and a lot of stuff that I was able to readily apply when I got the job in London. But there's a lot of the stuff that happened outside of the class that was my education, to be honest. And that was what I really took home. And those are the things I still think about to this day. Yeah. Sorry if I kind of meandered and didn't really answer the question that well, but that's
great.
How I feel.
It's absolutely fine. And to be honest with you, in different kind of occasions when we speak with alums or even current students, they do mention that. Of course, that's also what separates an MBA program from other degrees. There is, of course, the knowledge you'll be getting on a theoretical level, but there is so much more aside from that, and even more important because, of course, an MBA program is addressing professionals, and this is something we really want to keep a close eye on in the MBA program of RSM to make sure that you have the opportunity also to learn outside the classrooms with all kinds of practice opportunities, even with networking with your classmates, like you said. And these are the things that eventually are going to stay with you as the most important memories, and they're going to translate in sort of traits of your character, even that are going to change you. Like you said, you wouldn't be even considering doing a TED Talk, and then throughout the MBA program and after that, you're becoming an expert in public speaking, and that's amazing because
not an expert, but yeah, it's not crippled by fear. So if that makes me an expert, I'm happy to. Hillary, I think I skipped part of your question just in terms of how did the RSM careers team kind of help, and they helped tremendously. Because naturally, as sort of the curriculum and the program kind of winds down, you're kind of getting your recruitment and everything like that out there. Naturally starts evolving. So, like the RSM has a dedicated careers team that's sole focus is getting you placed. But before getting you placed, they get you to think about yourself. What's your narrative? What's your story that you're trying to get across? How does that story translate into a CV? How do you take interviews? How do you deal with these types of hard questions that these folks are going to be asking you? All of those things were invaluable to some of those, because as you know, when you do an interview, you forget to say something, or you say something, a little bit out of line, or you don't say something that you should be saying. Those are the make or breaks between you getting the dream job or you, going back to the drawing board. And it was those little cues, those little tips in terms of how do you get your CV airtight, how do you handle these types of, contract questions, but also just kind of getting you thinking about yourself or your new self, I should say, and translating that into a CV and getting that out there into a field. Because a lot of people went into the MBA as, marketing people, and they went out there being strategy and operations. Someone went in as a consultant and they went out as a finance guy. So it's like taking that before and after picture and translating that into your own story and translating that story into a piece of paper that you're going to be shelling out to all these different companies. Great. And also the RSM team had careers fairs. So they would have Dutch companies, international companies visiting the campus and doing these recruitment drives. I don't know what the expression is, but and yeah, I think, and then, McKinsey came in and ended up, recruiting my girlfriend at the time, and, offered her a job just before her program was even done. So those types of things are, all helpful elements to get you kind of into a place where you need to go after your program's done.
I think, and this is shifting gears a little bit, but I'm going to take a cue from Dan, and I think what I'm hearing is you've given us so much insight about your experience, and I think when people are looking at doing an MBA, they're trying to find their fit, and so how could you kind of summarize and I don't know if it's like 3 words or a couple of sentences about what is that culture that you found with your classmates that you feel like kind of represents or best characterizes RSM and your experience? I mean, is it more of a collaborative environment? What did you find kind of with the school and those kind of interactions? I think that's a big thing for people is fit. What would you
3
say?
words though. 3 words? Like you're doing this to me now,
Absolutely.
summarize it, making a Canadian, pigeonholing him into 3 words. Well, that's 2 words right there. Darn. I'm not going to do 3 words, but like I think what by nature the program is collaborative, right? It's you are, you're part of teams, you're part of groups, you're doing team projects. You're working with people that English isn't a first language. English might not even be a second language. People that have come from, generational wealth in India. People who have come from, we had a classmate who came from Syria in the middle of the conflict. We had somebody from South Africa who, has never done anything like this before. So by nature, you're collaborating with people and you're just learning about, well, you're unlearning first. You're unlearning all these little mental models that you have in your head, these judgments and everything like that. And I mean, collaboration is just the nature of the game, both in the program, but of course in business and beyond, your family and social life. So collaboration was sort of like a key cornerstone of the program. And you just realize that, I thought that I knew a whole lot of stuff, but, you're quickly humbled by a lot of people who know not more, but just know different stuff. They have different experiences. They share perspectives from a German lens or a, Chinese lens, which you never really would have thought possible. So that all kind of goes in and reinforces your learning. But I mean, a lot of folks question the MBA and sort of like, what's the value that it's going to bring to me? And I mean, 10 years ago, we didn't even have things like ChatGPT where you can just kind of type stuff up and spit something out. But that's not it either. I mean, it's, and anybody can learn accounting on a weekend course or can take a strategy boot camp or do these types of but doing it all in one place in a sort of, I don't want to say a pressure cooker, but a very sort of incubated environment that you're getting the classroom stuff, the out of classroom stuff, the social stuff, It's the whole package, right? And that's something that, you wouldn't really get doing any desk-based research or, spitting a prompt into ChatGPT or something like that too. So I hope I answered the question. I think that was a little bit more than 3 words, but I hope I answered it.
That's absolutely fine. Thank you. Thank you ever so much for this. That's really insightful. I wanted to ask you because, of course, you mentioned in the beginning in your introduction, and later on in answering some of our questions that after the MBA program, you got an opportunity to move to London in the UK, and then after that, you decided to come back home in Canada. Throughout this process, what kind of skills perhaps or behaviors you have seen yourself using as a professional that you have acquired or further developed throughout the MBA program? I know you mentioned a few during our conversation, but if you could sum them up, that would be great.
I think it's some of the best learnings is like the best learning is unlearning, right? And kind of dispelling some of these mental models that you develop just naturally based on your upbringing, where you live, your experiences, and what have you. But I think that I think it's being comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that sounds really cliched and kind of silly, but it's okay not to know the answer, but just to kind of fall in love with the problem and try and slice it up as many ways as you can and try and chip away at it. I get overwhelmed prior to the MBA with not knowing everything and not understanding everything, or this thing. Oh well, I need to learn this in order to know that, in order to know this, and then all of a sudden you get into this death spiral where you don't really do anything. I think it was kind of a huge relief, is just like being comfortable with being uncomfortable, and it's okay not to know everything, but having the right approach, the right perspective, bringing in the right people at the right time and asking them the right questions will help you kind of take the veil off this cumbersome question and help you kind of get to the end of it. And I mean, that's something that of course, I still do to this day. And it's the attitude too of just like, okay, well, I don't know what this is, but like, let's go figure it out. I think one of the biggest things that I took away from the MBA was think big, start small, and move fast. And that's something that, like, it was actually, something that I've been kind of taking with me the whole way. Dream big. Don't look at it as a big mountain. Just kind of chip it away at it slowly, and just keep going. Just keep going. And sometimes, if you hit a roadblock, you just kind of pivot, and that's okay too. I work in an innovation function in a bank. We're supposed to build things that are meant to be broken, and then you build them back up again, better, faster, stronger than what they were yesterday. And designing solutions that you don't really know what you're designing, but you know that it's going to solve problems, and you know it's going to have benefits, but you don't know what the end state's going to look like. But that's okay too. Like that kind of mentality, I never would have. I needed to solve, like prior to, I needed to solve for X, and everything had to be in a nice little tiny box. And if I didn't get it, then it would just be frustrating to me. But now, ain't no thing.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I wanted to ask you also another question in terms of your decision to relocate back home. How would you say that the network you established, you've created throughout the MBA program has perhaps helped you with making it a bit of an easier, well, not transition, but return, let's say, after the MBA program to the Netherlands back home?
Sure. Well, unfortunately, there was only one other Canuck in the batch, and he was from BC. I think there's somebody from BC who's on the chat, but so no fellow Torontonians to catch up with over a beer or anything like that. But the network, it still runs strong. I mean, I've seen and been part of some RSM alum activities here in the city, which is great because we just keeping keeping the flame alive, which is cool. But yeah, I mean, the network didn't necessarily help drive me home or soft landing. I just knew that, after, goodness, was it 7 years overseas? It was either like, and my parents were rightfully asking me too. It's like, are you ever coming back? And it was at that point where I was like, well, am I going to apply for my permanent residency to become a British citizen, or am I going to go back home and eat my grandma's food and back to my? And it was something that I always kind of wanted to do, was always come back to the city. But I just knew that it was the time to do so. Um, but yeah, and I guess after those times, I still had a lot of alumni friends in London, and there were no alums currently in Toronto as part of the batch. But so it was actually just a couple more goodbyes. But yeah.
It's also, I think, the benefit, but also sometimes the curse of having an international network, that people move a lot in different locations. So you could have, let's say, some RSM alum in one city, and then after a couple of years, they get another, let's say, opportunity to travel abroad, and they're more open to that. So it's a bit more spread out, let's say. But I'm happy
For
to
sure.
hear that
A
you're
lot of
still in
alums,
contact with them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of in the few years after, I would say even 5 years after we graduated, um, because so many Dutch companies just love RSM students, and we had friends that were working at Royal Dutch Shell, Unilever, all over the place. Someone was working at the Nike headquarters in Hilversum and everything. So um, it was so cool just to kind of have that that network. And I mean, London to Amsterdam or to Rotterdam or The Hague was less than an hour in an airplane, and by Canadian standards, I mean that just that just never happens. Hillary, keep me honest. Um, so yeah, the network was still really, really strong and really, really tight knit. I mean, they'd come to London all the time. We'd go back to the Netherlands, or we would just fly we'd meet somewhere. Like, let's go to Croatia, let's go to Spain, let's go to Italy. So yeah, it was still really strong.
Thank you very much. And talking, of course, all the time about MBA experience, that's also what we were hoping to hear from you. And thank you for being so generous with sharing those experiences with us. What would you say is the most memorable? It sounds a bit too serious, but the thing that stayed more with you, let's say, after completing it, you're still looking back at it, and it stayed with you throughout the MBA experience.
The most memorable. I mean, it's hard to really summarize kind of everything into one. Um, I was lucky enough to give sort of the valedictorian speech at our graduation, and for those that, well, I won't go into it, but I made an analogy about the MBA program based on this Dutch dish that you eat after you've had a couple of drinks, and just the ovation and the laughs after that one was quite cool.
Is it a
Um,
capsalon?
it is a capsulon, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The different layers. But yeah, it was just, and it just summed it up so nicely. You guys have to try capsulon. A friend of mine actually sent me a picture. He was having one 2 days ago, and he said that he missed me, and I just the envy. But anyways, some of the other memorable moments. I think the TEDx RSM was a really cool thing. Just putting it all together, having an opportunity to speak in front of everyone. Um, Again, it was just something that I never really thought that I would have ever done in my life, but I did, and I was so, I guess, kind of happy that I did. Um, the MBAT, like I said again, was awesome. You are looking at the 2014 MBAT beer pong champion. Well, one half. The second half was the guy in Australia that I spoke to on the weekend. But the MBAT it comes right at a time after we've done a very immersive work period, and this was just such a great. For those that don't know, you go to Paris or just outside of Paris, all the MBA schools from across Europe congregate, and we compete in, I think it's 2 or 3 days of sport and excitement, and they got parties, and it was just an incredible experience to have. But honestly, it was the little moments too, and those are the things that I miss the most. I miss riding my bike to campus every day and seeing these beautiful Dutch houses that I have tattooed on my arm. Just riding. I have my old apartment tattooed on my arm. Kralingsplatlaan. But yeah, just riding your bike to school. You know, going to study in someone's apartment, and you know you're staying up until ungodly hours of the night, but you're still silly and you're having a good time. Cold pizza and warm Red Bull on the table. It's those little moments, you know, those are the ones I think that I miss the most. Of course, there's these big milestone moments, of course, that I just spoke about, but it's the little things, honestly, that I miss the most. Um, and I miss Capsalon. I miss the Capsalon too. That's nothing like that back here.
It's a lot of people say that it's really a remedy for the hangover, so we have to take their word for it. Maybe you're one of them. So, but it's a
Big
really
advocate.
heavy dish.
Yeah, but you don't have to worry about it next morning. It's fine.
No, exactly. Well, that's really nice. Thank you so much for sharing all this. Um, I'm checking a little bit at the time. We have about 15 minutes or so, a little less. I have a couple more questions for you. And I see that we've been answering some questions that we've received as we move along. So organically, like we answer some questions through your really nice answers. Does someone who is, let's say, considering to do an MBA, do they need to know from the very beginning exactly what they would like to do, let's say post graduation? Would you say that having really clear career goals is a must for someone who's interested in pursuing an MBA?
I would actually say you should not. And again, I'm sorry if I'm going against the, you know, what you guys are hoping to get out of me, but um, I would say if you go in there, and there are folks that knew that when I go back home, I'm gonna, you know, get a consulting job at the same firm that I'd left, but I'm gonna be getting at a higher level, and that's totally fine. It's the folks that, you know, they graduate high school and they go to med school and they just want to become a doctor right afterwards, and that's totally cool. And if you're set and if you're passionate about a certain career choice, then the MBA is only going to strengthen and accelerate that path. But if you are kind of tunnel vision towards this vision of yourself, then I think you're only doing yourself and the experience that you would go through a disservice. Because part of it is just going through and just learning about so much new stuff that, you know, hey, like I never even knew that, or like statistics isn't that, like I always thought that like statistics would just make me sick, but I actually understood it and I really liked it. I'm not really, you know, super passionate about it now, but you know, it was just these, again, these mental models that I had had. Any advice that I would give is just let the experience shape you, right? And if you go in there and you're just kind of really set in your ways, it could be a good thing, but you could be also, you know, putting the blinders on to any other experiences or any kind of career pivots. And I would say that a lot of the folks that were in my batch left the program and went into a completely different career or went into a completely different industry. Some people started up their own business in the field that they were working, you know, a menial 9 to 5. Hey, I'm going to do this myself. So yeah, I think just kind of going in there with an open mind and letting the experience shape you is, at least it paid off tremendously for me.
Thank you for sharing that. That's something we discuss with candidates as well. I mean, some people have really, let's say, a plan set up for themselves, which is also fine. Of course, if you know where your passion is, then of course follow it. But using the MBA year, or the MBA experience, to discover if you are perhaps good at something else that you might not have considered before, having this open mind that you mentioned and this attitude of like exploring other opportunities is really important, because to be honest, like, and you said that as well, it's not something that you get very often as an adult, a professional, having this opportunity to really understand what is out there for you, what else is out there that you might have not considered. So
And I
definitely.
think about that all the time. I think about, you know, what happens if I, and it was not impulsive, but it was a very like, okay, like let's do this, like roll the dice, like let's do this, like it's the time is now. And I realize, and I think back on what my career, no, what my life would have been like had I had not done it. And like I can say with the utmost confidence, I wouldn't be where I am personally and professionally had I not gone through that experience. Mind you, I may not know about, two factor ANOVAs and statistics. I might not be able to do that anymore now, but the person that I am is because of the program that I went through, and that's no BS. I think about what had happened if I had not done the MBA, but I had not used that and kind of parlayed the MBA into a career in consulting in London. Being able to do what I've done, um, like I don't know, like I think about would I still be at the same job that I was at back in 2013? Maybe I would have a VP title or something like that, but I think I would have regretted not taking that decision. And like I said, there's a million different voices that'll tell you not to do it and, stay home, or, you're comfortable here and everything's fine. But you got to listen also to that other voice saying like, just do it, because like you said, we don't have that many opportunities in our life just to kind of press pause on these things and make these types of, it's an investment in yourself, but it affects your family, and it affects, sort of a number of different factors. But it's is leaving some room in for that voice of just do it, just try it, and in the process of me deciding which school, I got to visit some schools, like I said, in Canada and the U.S., and then across Europe too. But when I went to Rotterdam, of all places, I was like, what the hell? Why do I love this place so much? And yeah, it just felt right, and I don't regret a thing.
That's really important, that feeling you get also of the location, because many times we forget. I mean, that's also one of the reasons why we wanted to have this webinar and hearing out like your experience. A lot of candidates, of course, because choosing the right MBA program is a very serious decision. It can be quite stressful. And a lot of candidates tend to focus only on what's included in the curriculum of the MBA program, but they forget the location. But hearing you sharing everything today with us sort of verifies what we've been discussing with candidates very often, that I mean, it doesn't matter in the end if you'll be choosing RSM or not. It all depends also on what you would like to gain out of your MBA experience, each one of our candidates. But think also of the place where you'll be spending this 1 year, or as long as the program lasts, of your life. See also if it matches your personality, if it gives you the opportunity to feel at home or as close to home as possible away from home. And what is that feeling that it gives you without forcing it? And that's definitely something I really enjoyed hearing from you, because I also believe it's a very important aspect in the decision-making process for choosing an MBA.
No, it certainly is.
Perfect. I think we're coming very close to the end of our session, and I want to keep it within the hour. I want to make sure that I also respect the time that you have for us, Dan. I don't know if, Hilary, you have any comment or any last question you would like us to cover. I know that your connection doesn't make it very easy, so I'm really sorry for that. But maybe if you have like anything that you have in mind, we would sort of cover as last point.
I think maybe kind of last tips that you would have for folks that are listening. I mean, you've been there, you know how stressful it be making this decision, especially if, people are comparing against different schools, different locations, and any kind of parting words of wisdom, I think would be a wonderful note to perhaps close on. What do you think, Dan?
For sure. So number one, do your research, right? Like any big decision, in your life. This is not one to be taken lightly. This is something that, you know, you're investing your time, you're investing your money, you're investing, you know, a lot of your brain and your heart and everything in between into this program. So do your homework, you know. Um, if you're able to visit the campus of all the prospective schools, and like you said, just see what your instincts and your guts telling you. But in terms of doing the program or not, of course, I have a little bit of a bias, but I think it was the best decision I've ever made in my life, and I say that with the utmost confidence and certainty. Um, and yeah, I think I know myself, and I know that I would have regretted it if I had just continued on the path that I was going, because it would have just been the path of least resistance and the path of comfort, the path of, you know, not really questioning anything, just taking what I was getting and just doing it. And yeah, I guess you're getting me all kind of nostalgic, I guess, but it was. I wouldn't want to think about where I would be had I not gone through the experience. And now, geez, 10 years later, I'm still buzzing from it, and I'm still, you know, taking a lot of the lessons and all the things that I've kind of grown and built along the way, and applying it in there as well. So, um, like you said, like, you know, do your homework, do your research. There are going to be a million voices telling you not to do it, and that, you know, it's to this or no, um, but if it is something that you feel deep down in your heart of hearts that, you know, this is something that I want to invest in myself, I want to build my career, I want to open my mind to the world. Um, the MBA, but especially an international MBA, is just the trick. Like I got into some schools here in Canada, but I just knew that gotten it wouldn't have been a huge change. It wouldn't have been the change that I needed to have in my life if I just went to, you know, Queens or Western or even U of T. Um, I wouldn't have gotten that. Just flip everything on its head. Go to a place where you don't know the language, you don't know the people, you don't know, you know, a lot of things about where you're going into. But it was that fear of the unknown that really kind of motivated me and inspired me to just push yourself, push your knowledge, push your thinking into areas that you never really thought possible. So if it feels good, do it.
Thank you very, very much, Dan, for everything you shared with us today. While you were telling your story, I added the link of our website where you can find information as to how you can reach out to the admissions team. Feel free also to reach out to me directly. We can also view your CV. You can download our brochure, so we can keep in touch if well, what you've heard today was interesting and it kept you being more motivated for pursuing your MBA program at RSM. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. We'll be recording this session and we will be sending it to everyone who has registered for the event. Hilary, thank you so much for being with us today. And also you, Dan, for sharing all these amazing experiences with us.
A pleasure. And if you guys want to reach out over LinkedIn or through Maria, Hilary, happy to answer any questions that kind of pop up either now or, you know, throughout your journey. Happy to answer, happy to jump on a call. But anyone in Toronto, happy to meet for a beer.
That's the RSM spirit.
Yeah. Beer or the collaborative spirit, maybe a little bit of both.
I didn't say anything about beer. You were the one who started it. But no, thank you so much, Dan. That was amazing. And yeah, hopefully we'll see each other perhaps at another event. And people who are joining us today, will hopefully we'll see you at another either online event that we're organizing or in person. So take care and till next time.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.